Club is actually with the parents. The parents could be a challenge for us. We could have conflict with them. We could have conflict with the young adventurers or the pathfinders. Them not doing what we want to do, not doing what's on the plan. And we could have conflict with staff. Staff who aren't on board with what we're doing, who are not wanting to do something the way that the group decided to do, or who take off and do their own thing without being a team thing. So I want to start out by talking about several ways that you can handle conflict. And then we're going to talk about how strategies to deal with conflict. So one way of handling it is that you can just force the conflict. I mean, you can just bring it to the front and take care of it right there in front of everyone and just handle it right there. You could also just be accommodating. It's like ignoring it. You're not, you act like it isn't there, and try for everyone else to act like it isn't there too. You could just completely avoid it. You know the conflict's going on over there, but you walk over to the other side of the room. You could walk away from it. You could compete with conflict. So I know people that when there's conflict, that they just create more conflict. They jump right in there and raise the level of conflict. Or you could compromise. You could say, well, we know that this isn't what we planned doing, but you planned on doing this, so we're going to just go ahead and let you. So those are ways. But I'm going to suggest that there are some specific things that you can do to help handle conflict. And the last one is collaborating. You can actually talk about so how are you gonna work this out? But let's go to the 9 strategies. So for those of you that write things down, you're going to want to make notes. I think that that the worksheet, and I can also make this PowerPoint available if some of you who want to have it would like it. So the first thing that I would say is deal with conflict. Okay, most of us, and I would include myself in this, prefer to avoid conflict. We would rather it just go away by itself. But if you ignore or avoid conflict, it's just going to increase everyone's stress. It could increase anger or hostility. And certainly there could be people that are resentful of this. Managing conflict effectively deals with, helps everyone be much healthier and happier. And I would say that conflict is sort of like an infection. It just, if you don't deal with it, it just gets bigger and bigger and worse and worse. So first is deal with it. Before you deal with it, though, I would say that you should think it through. So especially if you're dealing with another staff person or a parent, and just think about, so what am I going to do? Don't just go in there all hot. And so you may want to talk about what you're planning on doing with a family member or a friend, but don't find someone that's just going to say yes to you. That's just going to say, oh, find someone who's objective, who's going to be able to give you some good feedback. And then I'm a big proponent of writing it down. With my team here, just overall, I'd say if we write it down, it's going to be more likely to get done. If you just think about it, it can come in one side and it may stick, but it may not. So just write it down and include with that the main talking points. What are you going to say when you address the conflict? So then, this is going to be more challenging in the COVID era, but I still would say talk it out face to face. Don't try to resolve conflict by texting or by emailing. And even over the phone is a challenge. Um, it's the easy way, but I would say that it's not the best way. Going face to face can be intimidating, but it allows for you, and I say handshake, you could bump or elbow shake or smile. It allows for you for them to see who you are, and to communicate effectively with your whole body rather than just in a little text, being able uh, to to ping someone. Um, when you meet that person, I would say a neutral location. So in someplace that they're going to be comfortable. If there's anything, go to where they're more comfortable rather than where you're more comfortable. And like I said earlier, using social media, texting, or even writing a letter should be avoided. Um, if face-to-face isn't an option, a phone call where that you can hear them and they can hear you, or even better, a video call where they can see you is better. So talk it out face-to-face. If it really escalates, then use a mediator. And I've seen this happen with parents, where the situation has risen to the level that you need someone that is outside. Maybe it's the elder of the church or your pastor, someone who's going to be able to mediate. And this is particularly true if it's a volatile situation or a situation where safety has been compromised. You may try other things and then go to this as a second. I wouldn't necessarily go to a mediator right out. It needs to be someone that is relatively neutral. And remember that if you're going to resolve conflict, your goal is not to defeat the other person, okay? It's to resolve the conflict. And that can be really tough because especially if you know you're right, then you just want to lay it on. And maybe this isn't you, maybe this is me. I want to say this is what it is, this is what's right. But I need to step back and say, so my goal here is to resolve the conflict, not to prove that I'm right. This can be a tough one. Apologize when appropriate. So conflict is very seldom one-sided. And so I would say that we need to be aware that there probably were multiple inputs into creating this conflict, and that I may have been one of them. I need to be willing to acknowledge that I had a part in this, and to be able to say, I'm sorry. And I want to say to you that even if you don't feel like that you were part of that, that we still need to be able to say, we're sorry for what I did or what I didn't do. Need to be able to meet people part way, because if we both hold off to other sides, or even if you hold off there and they're willing to come, you're still a long ways away. But if we're both willing to come to the middle, we're going to have a lot better chance of resolving the conflict. So the next one that I'd like to talk about is that we want to choose our battles. So not everything is a conflict of the same level. So there's always going to be different different opinions and ways. Um, and I laugh. So, there's a few of you here on the phone that know me and know the Forbeses, and the Forbeses have this trait that we know how to do things. We know the correct way to do things, and I, I, I need to just apologize right now to my mother because all of her children were born this way. She is not this way, but this is the right way to do it. And so I need to be able to step back and say, you know, there could be another right way. Not everything is just a single way. So I need to be able to choose. Is that something that's so important? Is it a legal issue? Is it a safety issue? Or is it just my issue? And then I need to decide, so what issues am I going to just live with? I'm going to say, yeah, that's okay. I'm going to just let that go. Because if everything is an issue, then when there is an issue, people are going to say, that's just them talking again. They are always against whatever it is that someone else is going to do. So choose your battles, decide the ones that are important, and let other things go. And then I would say work to minimize conflict. So one of the ways that you can do that, I said earlier that one of the things that happens with conflict is that people ignore it. So if you can start early, if you can take steps early, you're going to minimize conflict. And one of the ways to do that is to set expectations, whether it be with the Pathfinders, the parents, or the staff, to set expectations right up front that says, this is what we're expecting from you, and keep reminding them of that. That way, the chances of conflict go down, and when you do have a conflict, when you do have a disagreement, you can go back to say, well, so this is what we agree with. Conflicts are often between people who know each other, who are friends, but who may be strong-minded or may have different opinions. And I would say that you need to lean into your relationships. So to make sure that you've developed relationships with your staff, with your parents, with your kids, so that when you need to talk to them about something that that can be challenging, that they have a relationship to build on. My dad used to always say, you know, make sure that you put more money in the bank of relationships, so when you need to do a withdrawal, you aren't overdrawn. And I really think there's a lot to that. So make sure that you have relationships with people, so that if conflict happens, when conflict happens, you'll be able to address it. And then I'd say, you know, be friendly and sociable. Don't come in with a hammer and say, you know, we are going to straighten this out. And then we need to remember, everyone comes from different background, different needs, different priorities, and different expectations. So make sure that you understand where that person is coming from before you decide that, or before I decide that this is what we're going to do. And then I'd say you need to develop communication skills. So if you're going to be able to resolve conflict, you're going to need to be a good communicator. Don't confuse the person where they say, well, what in the world are they talking about? So I said earlier on that think about it ahead of time, make your notes when you're meeting, hopefully face to face or by video conference with a person. Express yourself clearly. Don't bring in side issues or tell stories that are unrelated. Okay, express yourself clearly. Ask for what you want so that you can get your point across to them. And this is a quote, I don't know where I grabbed this, but I love this. It says, a problem well stated is a problem half solved. So if a lot of our conflict is lack of understanding, lack of knowing, so what are the parameters? What are the baselines here? So, and then, oh, the last thing that I'm going to say here is that for you as a leader, I would encourage you to avoid these troublemakers. There are people who always are, avoid troublemakers. There are people who always are in conflict, who are like a little cyclone zone, and wherever they are, there is conflict. So I would say avoid, or at minimal, minimize the amount of time that you spend in and around them. They will suck you in and drag you down. So don't engage in gossip. If someone shares something with you, be willing to listen. But as a leader, you want to be able to take those in and then be able to process them appropriately. Get the facts before jumping to conclusions. A lot of times conflicts created because the facts are not correct. Someone heard something from someone who heard it from someone, and it's sort of like the story or the game that we play where you whisper in someone's ear and it goes around to 12 people, and when it comes out the other end, it's not the same story at all. So get the facts before jumping to conclusions, and consider the source, especially when what's being said is critical or harmful. And I would say, if something is critical or harmful, us as leaders need to take that in, and we need to have ways to be able to process, to vet that out, and not just jump on it and say, well, that's ridiculous. We're never going to let that happen in our club. I'm not going to keep you here for a long time. We have time for questions here, but here's my parting shots to you here. So I would say that conflict cannot be avoided. If you're more than yourself, you may have internal conflict, but if it's more than one person, you're going to have conflict. So be prepared, because it can be minimized and it can be resolved. Beth, that's what I have for this group today.
Okay, well, I have a couple questions that people have messaged me about. The first one was, how would you handle a staff member who won't do the required background checks or verified volunteers in order to work with youth?
Well, so I would rely on my safety and security statement that I made earlier. If the conflict is related to the safety of the club, the kids, or if it's a legal issue, then there are no compromises. For me, and I know this is every leader is going to have to deal with this differently, but I look at this and say, so if someone is not willing to take the background check or not willing to go through the process, then then what do I have to have everyone be able to do it? And then what happens if a child gets sexually molested or abused in some way? Well, then that's on me because I didn't follow through the policy. And I will just freely admit to this group that this is a non-negotiable for me because of the history in our family of a kid getting in our family getting abused in church.
Thank you. Okay, the next question was, do you have any recommendations on good books to on handling conflict?
Oh, yes, I do. Let me chat that in. I actually am going to be sharing that in my leadership skills one, but that's only going to be for the adventures. So let me grab that here after I'm done, and I'll chat it in. Perfect. But it's called Crucial Confrontations. But I'll give you the. But that is a book well worth your time, and it really talks about how important confronting it is, and it's something that in our society as a whole we don't do well. We are much more likely to avoid or minimize or try to ignore.
Fabulous. Okay, our next question is, I have a staff troublemaker. How do I politely deal with them in a way that doesn't make them mad and leave the church?
Oh, yes. So this is a really challenging issue because we're dealing with potentially salvation issues. So you've got the adult on one side who may be participating, doing things, being unchristlike in their in what they're doing. So that's rubbing off on the kids. The kids are seeing this and saying, or other staff members are saying, so is that what we're being called to do? Is that what we're being asked to be as Christians? But then you have the individual that if they feel like that they're being harshly treated, will step away from the church and from Jesus, frankly, because they could say, well, I thought they said they were Christians, and this is how they treated me. And that's where I would say, so really work on the relationship side of that. And that is going to be a lot of work. But I would never say never. I mean, at some point you may have to say to the person, it's just not working to have you here. But I would tend to go a lot further with them. So if they're a troublemaker, walk alongside them, model for the kids what Christian leaders do when people are troublemakers, when they don't do what we're supposed to, so that kids will see during our morning devotion, kids are watching and they're very observant. They will know when an adult is not participating, when they're causing conflict, when they're being a troublemaker, and they will watch very carefully to see how the other adults, how the leaders deal with that person, and expect to be dealt with in the same way. So I hope that helps. I would lean into the relationship side and try to get closer to them, and see if there's some things that you can do to move them incrementally. Don't expect overnight change, because there's probably a reason that they are where they are.
Okay, it looks like we have two more questions. The first one is, I have a kid with difficult behavior and the parents don't see any issues. How do I address this?
Well, I would say the first thing that you need to do is to try to assess why is the kid, when you say difficult behavior, so what does that mean? You know, is this a kid that is non-compliant? Is this a kid who doesn't follow instructions, or is off all over the place? When we said, you know, please sit in the camera, so that we, I mean, for some kids, this COVID era where we're meeting on Zoom is going to be really difficult, because some of our kids, and all of us, but some really learn better when they're up, moving around and doing and tapping and touching, and to do that within, you know, the scope of the camera, and to make it so they can communicate, yes, I am participating, but I'm just not sitting still and looking into the camera, is going to be tough. But I would say you know, you're going to have to write down some specific things, be very specific, script it ahead of time, think about what you're going to do, talk with if you don't have education background. So I don't have education background, and I don't work in Adventure with Pathfinders, but I teach primary Sabbath school. So my go-to person is my wife, who's an elementary education person, and I'll say to her, you know, what's an appropriate expectation of this child? Is it appropriate? Write those down, and then, you know, the parent is the adult. You're going to have to talk to the parents, and I would say to them, you know, these are the challenges that we're having in club, and we want to know from you, what suggestions do you have to help us be able to have so that your child can have a really great experience in club. If they say to you, well, I don't think there's any problems, that's why you need to have the specifics written down and say, well, but these are problems. This is what we asked to do in the club. These are the behaviors of your child. So what suggestions do you have? I hope that helps.
Okay, we have a few more questions that's come in. What should the chain of command for Pathfinders look like?
Well, I'm probably a bit upside down on this, so don't. I wish I could show you, but with Pathfinders, I'm more of the Pathfinder is here, and then the counselor. So the Pathfinder is what it's all about, and then the counselor and staff, and then the associate or assistant director, then the director, and then it's you know. So I'm at local clubs. So then I go to the elder or pastor.
Okay, perfect. And our last question is, I have two kids that are currently dating. How do I deal with them in a club setting if the parents are okay with them being in a relationship?
Oh my word! That, you know, that could turn into a conflict. It sounds all lovey, but it could turn into a conflict. You know, I don't know what age these kids are. If they could just chat in what the age is, because, you know, if they're TLTs, or you know, Voyager, Guide, are up there, then I think it's different. But I
Looks
would
like
say,
they're teenagers.
yeah, teenagers. I would say, you need to hold them to the same interaction rules that everyone has. Just because they're dating doesn't mean that they can do things that other kids during club time. Outside of club time, then it's up their parents. And I would say I would again engage their parents with this and say, this is our expectation at club. Outside of club, they're your child, but when you signed up to be part of a Pathfinder Club. And so, that's going to be an interesting balance, because again, kids are going to be watching to see how you're relating to them. So I would encourage you not to come down hard on them, but to lean into so this is our expectations of our Pathfinders while we're at club, whether that's in the club meeting or it's on outings. And so, if the boys and girls divide, boys and girls divide. If we go into small groups, you may not be in with those small groups together. Just because you're dating doesn't give you special privileges that you are going to have to be. You won't have to be separated. And it's going to be unfair. Let me just tell you, it's not going to be fair, but you want to do what's right for them. And so I hope that that's helpful.
Looks like that was all the questions.
Okay, well, it's great to be here with you guys, and I'll be hanging out with you all day long. So if you have something specific for me, just chat it into the private chat, and I'll be happy to talk with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, again, you can just sit on this link. It's going to take you directly to our next event, or our next session, which begins at 11, and I believe it will be our church service. So if you want to just hang tight, it looks like you have a few extra minutes. If you need to get up, stretch your legs for a minute, use the bathroom, now would be the time. And our next session will be starting at 11 o'clock.